Full quiet. Good
Okay.
evening.
Good evening.
The world is on fire.
That's what I hear.
Yeah.
Nothing much going on here. We're self is it self quarantining?
Yeah, that's what I guess so.
Um, my favorite girl, came home though. She came home from college, so Kyra's here. She'll be here for another couple of months while they finish out the semester remotely. Um, so
I didn't realize she had come.
she,
I thought, didn't you take her back to the airport to go back?
yeah, yeah, and then like 5 days later, she came back. So well, she had to get her stuff. Like she wanted to get stuff out of her room, and her roommates had all packed up and left.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's settling in and doing homework and all that kind of fun collegey stuff from home.
Yeah, that's what my boys are doing too. So,
Yeah.
and even Jeff, who's a gymnastics coach, they're going to start like doing virtual lessons, I guess, where they're going to record them and send them out, or maybe do it live. I'm not sure, but
Hmm.
just like strength stuff, they can't really. You can't coach. You can on the bars at home,
Yeah.
but keep their strength up.
So
Yeah.
speaking of Jeff, I saw on his podcast with you the other day that he was he saying something like he wanted to go by Super Jeff, or he wanted to have that as his new nickname. So got a story about that. There's this guy I knew back when I was working at a little consulting firm in Boulder, and his name was Jeff Schwartz, actually, and he went by Super Jeff. And like he was like strangely insistent that everyone call him Super Jeff. And this is like in a professional office environment, and like I'm not sure in a professional office environment if I'd ask everyone to call me Cosmo, but he was like, I'm Super Jeff and you need to call me Super Jeff, which is good because I joined the company like a couple months after he did, and I was just Jeff. And so that avoided a lot of confusion. So he would, all his emails, his email address, everything was Super Jeff. And anyway, so it was just kind of funny and reminded me of that when Jeff was talking about becoming Super Jeff. So be careful about being Super Jeff because there's already one out there.
So is this a long time ago then? Because this is before you were self-employed.
Yeah, this was between working at Raytheon and working for myself. So this was in right around 2000, probably.
Okay.
I worked there for a year.
Well, is Raytheon Hughes Aircraft? Because I thought you were working for Hughes.
I did, and Raytheon bought it. So I didn't change jobs or anything, but the company changed ownership.
Okay. How long did you work there?
I was there for about 5 years total
Okay.
before I went to this other firm for a year, and then I started my own thing.
Cool. So be careful about calling yourself Super Jeff and making your email
That's
address
right.
Super Jeff. And
Well, and then I was Shoeless Jeff. I don't know if you knew that. All of the ultimate players in Boulder know me as Shoeless Jeff, or they just call me Shoeless. And so it's kind of funny because on the field when you're running around, it takes more syllables to say Shoeless than just to say Jeff. But everyone called me Shoeless. No one ever called me Jeff. And now Cosmo. So I'm just a man of many
monikers.
monikers. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you. I thought Namen, a man of many Namen, but I was like,
Vielen Namen.
that's German. Vielen Namen.
So I'm not shocked at all that they called you Shoeless Jeff because I remember, golly, I
All
don't know
right.
how.
See,
What? Whoa, there he goes. We've lost. Oh, for the love. Now I'm just gone. So I don't know even know what to say. I just got to look at your soul,
deep into my soul.
deep into your soul, into the cracks of your soul, the white pasty. All right. Um, yeah, I remember you showed up at my house maybe 20 years ago and no shoes, and I was like, "What is going on here?
Hmm.
Who is this guy? Who is this hippie in my house?"
Yeah, I think I stopped wearing shoes around the time I graduated from high school. That's when it sort of started.
You're
I would,
totally like that Boulder,
yeah.
Colorado
Well,
IT guy.
this was before Boulder. Like I went to, when I was in college, I would go to class barefoot. I would walk on campus barefoot. Um,
And
There's
there were
another
no
guy actually. There's another guy. His name was Joe. He was a physics major. I don't remember his last name, but he also would go shoeless. So in these physics classes, there weren't that many physics majors. So there's like 9 of us on campus and 3 of us in a class or whatever. But he would also be shoeless, and so it was shoeless Joe
from
and
Hannibal Moe.
shoeless Jeff. So yeah, he was my inspiration.
So Shoeless Joe, I was in Damn Yankees my freshman year of college. And I was
Hmm.
just a member of the chorus, and it's about the Yankees and the Senators. And so I was a baseball player, and the main character is Shoeless Joe. There's this old guy who turns into a young guy, and they call him Shoeless Joe, like kind of after Shoeless Joe Jackson. And he
Right.
plays baseball barefoot, and he's Shoeless Joe from Hannibal Mo.
All right.
Yeah,
You know,
so
I
there
was
you go.
Joe in Our Town, my very first play. Um, I was Joe the paper boy, and my line was "Morning, Doc. Want your paper yet?" And then I had like one other line, which everyone knew your line because you only had one, didn't you?
Yes,
Um, by by 10 o'clock, I got to know all about Canada. Wasn't that it?
that's it. 35 years later.
We'd all say it with you.
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing. The because I played Emily's little brother. What was his name? Emily's the main character in our town. And I was because when I was a freshman in high school, I was probably going about 4'6", 85 pounds, be my
Yeah, you looked
guess.
12 or
Yeah,
whatever.
right. And that was kind of my curse. Well, it's wearing off as I get older, but I didn't get a role as an adult until my senior year of high school because you just couldn't put me. You couldn't stick me on stage as an adult.
Who were you senior year? What was your role?
Well, let's see. We'll go through it. So freshman year, I think was it Charlie Webb? No, I don't
Mm.
know. I was Emily Webb's little brother, and I had that role. And oh wait, so also in that play in our town, in the final act, I'm dead. I don't remember if you were dead or not.
I don't think I got to see it in the cemetery.
Okay, and I think curiously enough, if we look back at it, I think the people were dying from like tuberculosis and viral
Oh,
stuff.
really?
So oh yeah, if I remember right, it's been a while. Well, like one of the nights of the play, I think Aaron was dead on stage with me too. And I'm sitting there and I cannot breathe. But the whole third act is just a bunch of dead people sitting there.
Right.
So that like your presence, I guess it's like your presence is felt on stage. So the audience is like, there are the dead people. So it's more impactful. They can see you. And so I'm sitting there for at least 30 minutes and I could not breathe. I couldn't breathe.
Hmm.
And so after the play, Aaron is like, "What is going on?" I'm like, I can't breathe, and I forgot my inhaler at home. Like I always have my inhaler on me, but of course I forget it the one night that I can't breathe. And so I was like, "You gotta get to the phone." Nobody had cell phones, so you had to get to a pay phone or an office phone or something. And he called my mom. And he's like, "What do I tell her?" I'm like, "Tell her to get
Get
the
the
white
white
inhaler."
inhaler.
And that was Alupent was the white inhaler.
Okay.
And so that's so ever since get the white inhaler is kind of like our the eagle has landed code within our
Yes.
group. So yeah, he had to tell my mom to get the white inhaler, and I probably had to wait another half hour for her to get up to the school before I could take it. And
Good
I
time.
yeah, well yeah, there were probably a lot
I
of
mean, at
times when I
least it
could
was
have
a
died.
death scene. So,
Yeah, so I was yeah. I don't think tuberculosis isn't that a lung disease or a lung?
yeah, don't you fill up with fluid or something?
I think so. That would be bad for me. So speaking of that, also we're getting off track, but so I read, and I told you about this, but I read an article. You know, I was quarantining like ahead of everybody, like a week ago Monday. So I've been self quarantined for 11 days now, where most people are just starting to talk about it in the last 2 or 3 days. I think is that
Hmm.
fair?
Yeah.
Um, and because I went, it's probably good that I got sick at this point because I had another virus of some sort that was causing me problems. And it's a good thing I went in because that's what my doctor told me, get alone and do it now. And I guess that was Monday the 9th. Is that right? So anyway, I read an article yesterday about a guy, I think it was in New York, but I'm not sure, but young, healthy father, entrepreneur, goes to the gym 3 times a week. And he said he got it. And his response was, I'm going to be fine. But I could tell when I walk from one end of my apartment to the other, I can't breathe, is what he said. And so he was like, I'm going to be fine for this, but I can see why somebody with lung disease like asthma or emphysema or what's the other big one? Anyway, would be in
Pneumonia.
pneumonia. That's not a disease though. That's but cystic fibrosis. That's what I was trying to think of, where they would be in real big trouble with this thing, and so I'm glad my doctor was out ahead of that. Got me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so a lot of fortunate things for me.
So what's your plan? You're just going to go, you're going to go back home in about a week, hopefully, and just hang out at home, right? You're going to sort of stay self quarantine there, but at least you're in your home.
Yeah, so I'm with my mother-in-law right now in the basement, and Justin is home from Spain. He's been back a week now, so today's day 8. He came back. He got back to the house like at midnight last Friday, at the beginning of Saturday. So another week here, and as long as he's not showing any symptoms, which he isn't yet, um, then I should be able to go back home. But I'm sure we'll be wiping everything down. I'll be working from home, I would imagine, for at least another month.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us, I've been saying for over a week, I think by this coming Monday, the whole country will be in that, you know, in the same mode that Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York are in right now. And I think St. Louis County was talking about doing that as of Monday, St. Louis County and City,
Hmm.
like mandating quarantine.
Yeah,
Crazy, isn't it?
definitely.
So, I mean, my thought is this is the big test of our country, who we actually are, not who we've acted like for the last 20 years. Um, yeah, I really think this is a big test, and you already see businesses starting to manufacture. You know, they're switching their manufacturing to um, I don't know what's the word, retooling current ventilators or making new ones
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
making masks and everything. Everybody wants specific answers and numbers and timelines, but it's like, well, they're working on it. They're working fast, and it'll happen fast. But it's tough to give a
yeah.
date right now.
Well, it's pretty cool to see how when people, countries, companies are motivated, how much we can really accomplish. And it makes you think, man, there's so many other good things we could do. Like once this is passed, why don't we put our efforts towards some other things like we're putting our effort towards this, and we can really see some impact on, I mean, whether it's poverty or hunger or, I mean, just so many things that are struggles in the world today that if we really thought about it and put some effort into it, we could make sweeping changes. So I hope that I hope that we learn something from this whole experience and we can do something good with it.
I have that same hope. You know, you could even talk about infrastructure and how we're so weak
Hmm.
on that right now. But yeah, I have that same hope, same as you. It's going to be a difficult. It might be a difficult year and a half from the sounds of it. You know,
Uh,
of quarantining, going back out, then coming back in and going back out. Just yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
yeah.
But I think Derek
Okay.
had a good point that he said, you know, it's good to see that Korea and South Korea and Japan are kind of emerging after a month and a half, and that's kind of hopeful too.
Yeah, that Derek, he is such a smart guy.
Why is it always about Derek?
It's always about Derek.
Hmm.
So
You know,
speaking of all that serious stuff, we should now tell some sort of a funny story to
yeah,
lighten.
please, Lord.
Go ahead.
Oh, I no, you
You were,
go. Did
you
you?
were in the middle of you were saying we were getting off track, and I didn't know we had a track to begin with. So I'm not sure what track I'm trying to be on, but you were talking about all the different roles you had, I think in drama. So you were in The Good Doctor.
Okay, yes. So freshman year, I was Emily's little brother. Had one line, but I was on stage the entire third act, clearly wheezing,
Dying.
dying while dead, kind of like a zombie. And then, so sophomore year, we did Flowers for Algernon, which is
Mm.
about a I don't know the proper term, mentally disabled adult. And I was his name is Charlie, and I was Charlie as a child. They had like two or three
Oh,
flashbacks, and my mom would just what was her name, Megan something. She would wail on him. I mean, it's like I'm reading that was like, see Jack run, see Jack see, and she'd be like, no Charlie, no, you're stupid, and then like wham, and like so like I had two or three lines like that
dang.
because I could only play children. And junior year, I don't remember what we did that year.
Well, I'll tell you this. I didn't even get, I mean, after my big role as Joe the Paperboy in our town, Mr. Nadelceder didn't cast me in anything the rest
Yeah.
of the time I was there. I must have done such a poor job as the Paperboy. And he was like, nope, can't have this guy again. In fact, you and I remember we tried out for something together and you got it and I didn't. But I took drama from him and got A B.
Oh, that's why you were the
I only
salutatorian.
B. That's why I ended up salutatorian. Freaking Kurt Nadelceder in my drama class. So luckily, my career really took off when Mr. Getz showed up and
Yeah.
gave me a chance.
So
Junior year, what was it? So we were in 10 Little Indians, right?
that
That
was
was
senior
senior
year.
year.
Yeah. Good Doctor and 10 Little Indians was senior year. We were in both of those. You had like
Yeah.
the role in 10 Little Indians.
Yeah, which reminds me, I was the killer. For those of you who don't remember my big role there, I was the killer. I was a judge, and I had this, and I was insane, right? And so at the end of the play, I had this wig made out of yarn on my head. It was white yarn that was just like, anyway, like the British judges do. And I come through the door in my big entrance at the end when you finally find out, oh, he's the killer. Sorry if you haven't read the play. But then a little piece of yarn got caught on the doorknob, and so I'm walking across stage with this yarn trailing, slowly pulling out of the wig on my head, and then there was this big climactic fight scene where I tried to kill
Oh yeah.
the heroine, who is Amy Puleo, and Dave Carite was playing her boyfriend or whatever to save her, and so I pick up a glass bottle to smash over Dave's head. Except one night, and it wasn't real glass; it was that
It was a glass.
shattery
It's
glass.
supposed to shatter like when you break it,
Right.
because glasses don't shatter like that when you break them.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's made out of, I don't know, some sort of a sugar or something like that. So I pick it up and it shatters in my hand before I can even hit Dave with it. And I'm holding kind of like the bottom of this glass going, well, what do I do with this now? So I like slam it on his head and kind of like try to drive it in to his skull. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I'm sure my facial expression was awesome. Oh, and the other thing I did was there were Indians on the mantelpiece. There were little Indians, and every time someone died, an Indian would disappear. And there was a time,
Oh
and I
yeah.
would reach around at one point from behind the door. You couldn't see who it was. You just saw this arm, mysterious arm reaching out and grabbing an Indian and taking away. But I reached around and I couldn't find it because it was set too far away. And so I'm kind of pawing over there on this mantle. And so everyone in the audience is seeing this arm kind of flailing over there, trying to find the Indian. And I couldn't expose who I was because that would give it away too soon. And I don't remember how I ended up finally getting it. Maybe I'm just like getting contortionist moves or something. But those are the three things I remember as being little errors on stage.
That's hilarious.
Let's not even talk about the fact that I had a British accent the entire play. And looking back, I can't imagine how bad that must have been.
Oh no, you have a good British accent.
Did I? Well,
Yeah. No, so
anyway.
I was I don't remember. I recall being in that play, but not having a big role, which I'd kind of been used to. And then in The Good Doctor, I played a drunken sailor. The Good Doctor is like a collection of like 10 different 10-minute scenes or whatever.
And you had that fake beard painted on, right?
I took, you take the cork, you burn the cork, and you splatter it all around, or it might have been black makeup. I don't know. So my mom told me when she went
to... You did blackface, as I recall.
No, I did not.
I hope that never gets out.
By the way, that whole thing, I get it, because I don't think I ever thought that was okay. I don't remember ever thinking that was an okay thing to do. So I remember my mom came to see the play, and we came home. She's like, I was there, and I'm watching, and a guy comes out, and he's a sailor, and he's got that little beard. I'm like, oh, that's a nice looking little guy. And then about halfway through, I realized it was you. Thanks, Mom.
That beard really disguised you, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know what happened junior year. There must have been a year there, either freshman or junior, where we just weren't in any plays. But so with Kurt Nadelceder, I have two stories there. I remember when we were in our town rehearsals, and we were rehearsing that whole third act. So I would sit there in rehearsal with my ADD for a 3-hour rehearsal, just sitting there. Because I didn't have one line, nothing ever happened. I think the entire thing that happened in that act was maybe a spotlight shone on me at one point while they were talking about little Buddy Webb or whatever my name was that died of tuberculosis. So I'll bet it was multiple rehearsals where I was just sitting there for 3 hours doing nothing, and you got to wonder why, you know. Maybe so I could practice sitting there because I had a problem with that. So I was just cutting up, and I would not stop. And Nadelceder just stops. It says, Dirk, after practice. And I'm like, oh man. So,
Busted.
so he pulled me into a room and actually told me that he thought I had a lot of potential and, and really, it was really difficult. He was just honest. He's like, it's really difficult to find roles right now. And I don't know if he told me it's because of my size or whatever, but it was a pretty honest, straightforward conversation, but also a positive one. So he actually really handled it really well for the situation. He didn't like go off on me, but he was, I'm sure he's about to put his head through a wall when I wouldn't just stop.
Hmm.
But then, so he was there through our junior year and he left, and then Getz came in. Well, so the pretty solid rumor was that Natal Steve was going to do, what is the Woody Allen play? Play It Again, Sam. And that he was looking at me to be the lead in that
Mm.
because, I could pull off like a Woody Allen type of lead,
Sure. Yeah.
the moping, incipient, kind of funny but kind of pitiful guy. Yeah, I could have pulled that off, but then he left, and I never had a lead role in high school. But
Kind
I
of like my
did.
baseball story. I mean, that could have been the launch of a huge career in
Well,
acting.
well, except I actually went further than that.
Well, that's true.
Yeah. So
Tell me about that.
okay. So um, freshman year. Oh, this is perfect. So freshman year of college. So I became a theater major and got an acting scholarship, which is very small. It wasn't much, and I think I was like third alternate because the other people didn't come or something. I know, right? Third
Well, we came
alternate.
down. All these people dropped out. You're the last guy on the
It's
list. So here's
exactly.
$200.
It's exactly
Congrats.
what happened. It was $200 a semester, and, which was, probably enough to feed me for 2 or 3 months at that point of the economy in my life. So the my first role was in Damn Yankees, the musical. My second role was in Merry Wives of Windsor, where I played a child. So I'm a 18, 19-year-old child, my freshman year of college, in a Shakespeare play. Then the summer after that, I played the sergeant in. Oh, I can't remember I played him like Sergeant Major in that Monty Python skit. Sergeant Major marching up and down the square. And anyway, and then my biggest role was right after that. We brought in a new director of our theater department, Lee Orchard, and he cast me as the nerd in The Nerd.
Like the
Um,
Steve Martin nerd? Was it
no,
based?
no, that's The Jerk.
Oh, right.
Yeah, no, this is a play called The Nerd, written by a guy that my mom went to high school with. What's his
Huh.
name? I can't remember. He wrote The Foreigner too. Um, but I can't remember his name. But yeah, so I played the nerd in that, and it was Urkel. It was just Urkel. He did this. That's what he wanted, and that's what I did, and I was pretty good at it. And then after that, I didn't get cast into the woods, and then what did I do? Junior year, I played Festy in 12th Night. It was a singing clown. And then my senior year, I started up a drama group at Campus Christian Fellowship, so I really devoted all my time to doing that.
So do you feel like you were being typecast? Like, if you had gone on to an acting career, would you always have been like the goofy sidekick or,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I there's a stigma about that, but the reality is that if you want to be an actor and you can make a living doing that, then go get it,
Yeah.
and don't sweat it. But if you happen to fall into a role where you make a gazillion dollars, and then you can be picky about it, then go ahead. But
Hmm.
like I mean, I know people that went to professional acting, and I did it for one summer. Oh yeah, so I was in The King and I one summer, and of course when I was 20, and of course I played Prince Chulalongkorn, the son of the King of Siam. So I was playing a 12-year-old, and when I was 20.
I saw the other day that in Napoleon Dynamite, John Heater playing Napoleon, a high schooler, he was like 25, and the guy playing Pedro was like he's 31 years old or something like
Was
that,
he
and they're
really?
playing like these. Yeah. So yeah, you're older, but you got to play younger people. That's an important role.
They were both pretty convincing as teenagers.
Hmm.
Hmm. Especially Pedro, 31.
Something like that. Yeah.
He did, with that mustache he had. He did not look more than
It was the
16.
mustache.
Yes, that's my entire acting career.
Okay.
Um, And when I did that professional theater that one summer, that was when I decided I didn't want to do it for a living, because it was the rest of the cast were really, they would just travel from place to place every 6 to 12 months, going to cattle call auditions and taking whatever job came. And they were kind of, uh, I don't mean it negatively, but they were living kind of like a gypsy lifestyle where they just,
Hmm.
just traveling. And I really wanted a family, and realized I probably couldn't put those two things together. I would have had to, the rule is really that you got to give acting, or acting, singing, modeling, if you're going to really give those careers a go, you have to give it 10 years and be willing to sacrifice 10 years of your life to make it. And that's who the one person that I went to college with that did make it. It was almost exactly 10 years after she graduated.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, I showed up to college, and I remember my first semester, the theater department contacted me and said, "We heard you've done some acting in high school." I mean, I don't know how they heard. Maybe it was on my resume or something like that. When you apply to college, things that you've done. And so they invited me to try out for whatever the play was, and I said, "Well, I enjoyed acting, but mostly I enjoyed acting because of my friends who were in acting with me, right? Like I loved being with you and with Aaron and Matt, and we had a good time together." And so I was like, well, I'll think about it. But of course they had, as you need to, they had practices every night, and it was, 2 3 hour commitment every night. And here I am, a freshman, trying to figure out and navigate my way through this whole new experience of college, when I actually have to do homework. And in high school, I never did homework and things like that. And so I was like, I think I'm going to pass on this. So again, there's a turning point in my life when I gave up my acting career that could have started at, in engineering school, I'm sure, which is where all the good actors tend
Right.
to gravitate. So
Raleigh's putting on those big plays.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's those turning points are really interesting to look at through your life, where you realize that, hey, you really like this thing, but it wasn't for the thing itself. Like I really like playing board games, but with you guys. I'm not a I don't want to go to a convention and sit there and listen to
yeah,
somebody tell me rules about a board game for 15 minutes. And I do it for the fellowship of it more than the gaming.
right.
And I'd rather just get on there and play around with it, and have some fun and try to be competitive. But I don't. If I win, I win. If I don't, I don't. And it's fun either way. I have
And you
the
generally don't,
Yeah,
so
that's fair.
works out.
And I get to troll you a little bit while we're going through Dominion cards or whatever.
I'm the same way. I feel like things like bowling are the same way, right? Like
Yeah,
bowling is just a ridiculous game, but you go with the right people, and it can be a blast, right?
yeah.
And in skiing, I'm this mediocre skier. I have no ambitions to be a great skier. I'm comfortable with where I am, but I go because of the social experience. I go because I'm hanging out with people I enjoy being with, and if we happen to be riding up the lift and talking together, and then ski down real quick, and then hang out in the lodge for a long lunch or whatever, that's kind of my enjoyment of that activity.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like I remember going to college. There were six of us in high school, and two of us went to Kirksville, two of us went to Mizzou, and two of us went to Rolla. And Mizzou's like the big party town, and Rolla is a party, kind of a party town too, if you really want it to be. Which
Well, during
Steve,
St. Pat's it is.
yes, Steve did okay with the parties.
Yeah.
And Kirksville just doesn't have that reputation. And people were like, "What do you know? Kirksville's too boring." And I'm like, "Well, I'll have friends. If you have people you care about. I mean, I don't think
Hmm.
anything's really boring. You can.
So how'd that go that first year rooming with Matt?
So, all right, we're into this. Okay, so our friend Matt, um, who's probably we are probably the two most opposite people within our friend group, I would say. Um, and at the time, especially the things we believed and the way we lived, I think were pretty darn opposite.
Yeah.
So,
Safe.
'cause, yeah, I was very much a fundamentalist, evangelical Christian guy, interested in theater, and he was very much a free thinking, freewheeling. I don't know. Hippie. I don't know if we call him a hippie at the time because he kept his hair short. So I have a couple stories from that. So so we were roommates our freshman year, and I remember we had a teacher, Mrs. Baker, who one time she tried to help me. She did. She said, a lot of times you and Matt are gonna live together. I'm like, yeah. She's like, a lot of times, maybe it's better just to go with somebody you don't know, somebody that because maybe things don't quite mesh with you and a friend, and you can become then you're not friends at the end of it. And it's because she's an adult. She could see what was pending.
You're saying she saw the two trains heading toward each other?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just going to be a wreck.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that she could probably see that I was going to be more closed off to him than he was to me, because Matt was pretty accepting of just about anything,
Mm-hmm.
whereas I had a pretty specific idea for how I would live. And I'm not super neat, but I'm also not Matt. So, so the entire freshman year consisted of um, a clear delineating line down the middle of our room where I would take the clothes or whatever else was on the floor and make sure that they were apportioned to the proper side of the room. Because my clothes were in a laundry basket, his were pretty much everywhere. Um, and I wouldn't say we didn't get along. We just were just so opposite, and yet such good friends at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember him coming home from soccer practice in the middle of 95-degree heat, and he had a date or was going to a party or something. So his preparation from soccer to the party was to change into a different set of soccer shorts and T-shirt and bowling shoes,
Yep,
which is a
bowling
different
shoes.
story because
Sounds about right.
Matt's Matt's constant supply of shoes was shoes that he wore out of the bowling alley. That's how Matt got new shoes. Um, and he took his deodorant, slapped it in his pits. 1, 2, puts them
Ready
down
to
his pants,
party.
and went to the party. And I'm just like, that is disgusting. So it was a year that, and yeah, we ended up not being super close, but we through the rest of college, but we ended up living in apartments for our last 2 year, junior, senior year, that were, I could have hit a golf ball at his apartment right down the street. But they called his apartment the Burrow. So he lived there with Rob and this other guy. They had started the Burrow freshman year in the dorms. And they called it, this is just amazing. They called it the Burrow because that's where all the beaver went, which is wrong on any number of fronts,
Yeah.
because they should have called it the dam. Or what would a beaver's lodge be? Was it a lodge,
It's a
maybe?
lodge.
Yeah, should have
But
called it
calling
the
it the
lodge.
lodge doesn't sound as
It
mysterious.
really doesn't. So he lived in the Burrow, where they just always had parties, and that was his thing, not my thing. But yeah, so I think as I grew older, I know as I've grown older, I've grown more accepting of stuff, but I still don't think we're good roommates.
You wouldn't want to move in with them right now? I mean, because that was an option, right? With the coronavirus, is your mother-in-law or Matt's place?
Yeah, that was somewhere down the list. Somewhere down the list. So yeah,
My own story, so Betch and I are the two that went to Rolla, and he pledged Teak, the fraternity, and invited me to pledge as well. And I was like, well, I'm not sure that's really the lifestyle for me. But I went to a couple of events and heard some stories from him that made it very clear I should not have ever pledged. And so that was fine. But remember I felt all cool because here I am, this freshman, and I have this in because he could get me into the parties that were cool. And I was cool in high school, and we went to all the lit parties,
big
of
time.
course. Um, and I remember I hated the taste of beer, just hated it. I hadn't really had beer until I went to college. And so you walk around, they give you this cup when you come in. And I think Betch, to his credit, he's like, I'll get you a free beer, which was a big deal. And so I had this big old cup full of beer, which I hated. And I'm walking around, and if you drink it, they'll give you more. They just like kind of walk around and fill these things up. And I'm like, I hate this stuff. So I'd walk around with this cup full of beer, and I'd like kind of tip it up like I was drinking it, but I wouldn't actually put any in my mouth. I would just let it kind of touch my lips for a minute, and then I'd put it
Oh,
down. So I always had a full cup, and I didn't have to have people trying to give me more. And that was the night I think I saw all these people, like there was sort of like this big party dance room, and people are like throwing up, and the floor is slippery with vomit, and it smells of vomit. And I'm like, this is just not the life for me. And Betch had a great time being a part of Teak, but it was clear that was not the direction I was going to go. So he and I didn't actually see a whole lot of each other during college, but we were on campus together, and he did his thing, I did my thing, and it was cool.
So, were you actually excited to pledge teak? Like you thought it might be, you thought it was gonna be the thing you wanted to do?
No, I was doing it more like, let me learn more about this and see if it's for me. And then he tells stories. We should invite him on as a guest. He could tell
Yeah.
some stories. He tells stories like part of the whole pledging, and we can't say the hazing word that starts with an H that
You
rhymes
just
with
that
hazing, because hazing doesn't happen in fraternities.
right.
Um, but like all the freshmen, or the, what do they call the new ones? There's a word for the new pledges. Anyway, like when they were doing homework, they'd lock them in this room to do homework, and they'd play Tom's Diner, that song. If
Okay.
you remember that song, that's the one that was like,
You can have anything. Oh,
anyway, that one. And they played at like super high volume nonstop for hours while they're trying to do homework. And I'm like, this sounds like a medieval torture device, but if that's what you have to go through. So he had stories like that about the things that they do to the new pledges. And I'm like, no, no, thanks.
and wasn't there at Rolla like this a big pool of vomit and whatever that they would jump into and stuff?
So that's a whole different story. Yeah. So that's so St. Patrick's Day was last week, right? And I wore my green. So St. Patrick's Day at Rolla is just, it's a very special time. And uh, I think my kids have all heard these stories by now, even though Pepper was not excited about me telling them. Pepper's sitting right over here listening to me. So
No way.
uh, so anyway, during St. Patrick's Day, St. Patrick is the patron saint of engineers, and as an engineering school, it was a big deal. So we got like 3 days off school for St. Pat's Day. It was like the biggest party of the year. They'd paint the streets green in town. They had parades. I mean, it was like a big to do. And so you'd wear a sweatshirt. You'd wear your green. It was called. It was just a sweatshirt, and every year they had a different sweatshirt. And so I pulled mine out last week and wore it around with great pride. But back to what you were talking about. So there's this thing. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes with St. Pat's, but this particular thing is called Alice, and Alice is this big. It's like an inflatable pool, one of those pools you sit on the ground. It's got enough room for like two people laying down in it. And during St. Pat's week, when all the parties are happening, all the fraternities, they would gather together. I don't know whose job this was, but gather together all the vomit and all this stuff. And they'd have like barrels at the different fraternities that people would, if you have to throw up, you need to throw up in that barrel because we're saving that for later. And then they would gather it all together, and they'd fill this pool with vomit and beer and who knows what else. It was something. And so then on the weekend, I don't remember what day, like the Saturday of the week or whatever, they'd put this out on the football field, and the stadium was not. This is not like Mizzou Stadium, like it can seat probably 1,000 people, right? It's not a huge stadium, but I remember going there year after year because you'd go and you'd watch these things, and you could be up in the stands, hundreds of feet away, and you could smell this thing. So it was potent, but they had this little fenced off area, and this pool was in the area, and all the people who had been chosen to be Knights of St. Patrick would gather in this area, and then the St. Pat's board, which is a bunch of like football player looking fraternity guys, they'd call your name and they chase you around. I know this because I was a knight my senior year, and it was supposed to be this big honor, right? Like to be named a Knight of St. Patrick was a big deal. Um, Except what happens is you go to this fenced off area, they call your name over the loudspeakers, and like 15 giant football player guys chase you around. And the longer you run, the more they hurt you at the end. So you don't want to run too long because they dogpile you. And these are big guys, and people would break bones and
What
stuff like
the?
that. Yeah. And so they chased me around. I let them chase me for a little bit, and then they grab me and they put me on the ground. They dogpile on me, and then they bodily lift me up and carry me over. And I say me, but it's everybody who's a knight gets a turn at this. And they go and they carry you over, and then you kiss the foot of St. Patrick, who
Oh
is
my God. I know
some
it's
dude,
coming. Yes.
and then they throw you
Oh.
into this pool, and this is the high honor of St. Patrick.
So
So
you were thrown into the thing?
yeah, oh yeah, I had my turn at Alice. It was called Alice. The rumor is Alice was the name of like the former girlfriend of the guy who invented this thing 50
Oh.
years ago or something like that.
Did you like immediately vomit? I mean, what in the? I
No,
can't.
you kind of hold your breath and
Oh, did you
for
go
the
home and
best.
shower
Well,
immediately?
yeah.
You don't have to hang out like for an hours afterward at a
No,
party or something?
no. You kind of do your walk of shame across campus smelling like vomit, I guess.
Golly, that's horrific.
And you wonder how this kind of stuff comes about, right? Who made this up? I'm
Oh,
pretty sure Betch was a knight as well, probably his senior year. I don't
they
remember.
can't still be doing that, can they?
Well, they changed it the year after me. I was the last one that
Wait,
partook of that. The next year, because too many people were getting hurt. I mean, it was like
yeah,
breaking bones. There were alcohol-related deaths on campus related to St. Pat's. And so the university really had to clamp down. And so in later years, it wasn't vomit anymore. It was like water that had been tinted green and they mixed a bunch of flour in. And so it had sort of this consistency of chunky
slime.
slime. And so it was different. And they didn't chase you around. I think they would like let you step into the pool yourself. I mean, it was like super watered down from the old heady days of Alice. It was nuts.
It sounds miserable. I
It
do
makes for a
not.
good story to tell your kids, though.
I guess, man. Oh, congratulations. So
And
you said that I came to Rolla one time, and I don't remember doing that.
you totally came one time. You slept on my couch. That was my senior year because that was the year I had kind of a suite. I had 2 rooms, and I had a couch and TV and my desk in one, and then like my bed and my closet and all that in the other. And I absolutely know that you slept on the couch. You came down, and I'm sure we saw Betch at some point. And yeah, it was just for a weekend.
Were you there for 4 years, or did you go longer?
I was 5 years. I kept changing my major, so after changing my major 5 times, it took me a little bit longer to get through.
Okay, so I graduated in 4 years. So that would, if it was your senior year, then I would have been already.
You'd have been graduated.
I would have been youth ministering at the time.
Okay.
I have no recollection of that at all. Did we do
No,
anything interesting, or did I just come hang out for a couple days?
I think you just hung out for a couple days. I mean, yeah.
Hmm. Wow.
I
Well, you
came to
came.
your place.
Yeah, you came to Kirksville. So I don't remember what that was for. It was, but whatever. So you came up
It
to
was just to
Kirksville.
come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I had roommates, Jason and Rich and Ted, and Ted was my evangelical Christian roommate, and Rich and Jason were not. Whatever, we're all friends, and um, so and this wasn't we weren't like a bunch of partiers. I mean, in general, but for some reason, the the night that you came was the night that Rich and Jason decided to go out and get plastered beyond imagination, which they never did. Um, so I was in bed, and I don't remember if I heard it or not, but you were sleeping on the couch downstairs, and they rolled in at I don't know 2 or 3 in the morning and decided that they should start ottering down the stairs. And for the uninformed in the group, the ottering is you lay on your belly and just go head first down the stairs. Like, so you're ottering, you're sliding down the stairs. And so I remember in the morning you told me that all you would hear over and over was, oh.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what that was for. You brought a video camera, didn't you? Like you were videoing things.
Uh, Maybe.
Seems familiar.
It was just a very special night.
But those are the only times we really came to each other's campuses while we were in college,
Yeah.
which is it feels like we should have done that a lot more, but we didn't.
Speaking of video cameras, I was given the opportunity, I don't know, probably my senior year, my first senior year, to make a promotional video for the university. This was a video that was shown to other universities and to prospective students and things like that. And they gave us a video camera, me and my friend Chancellor, and we were supposed to like put together, footage of students in the campus and things like that, and then we'd add music and narration to it. So we went around and we filmed all this stuff. And so we, at one point, we went to the administration building, which is called Parker Hall, and they have a statue there of this big kind of pot-bellied guy named Albert Lumen, and I don't know who he was, somebody famous from the past. And so it's like this big bronze statue of this guy sitting in sort of an alcove and, lit nicely and stuff like that. And so we made up this whole story about how before before big tests, students would often come to the administration and they'd rub the belly of this statue for good luck. And we made this into like this, this campus tradition that people would rub the belly for good luck. And we managed to get that onto this promotional video, which then got sent to all these other schools about rubbing the belly of a statue for good luck on tests.
And
So
that
that
totally
was,
wasn't true?
no, we totally made that up, but it was just awesome.
It didn't start a new tradition or anything, did it? Like people coming in?
I mean, you could go there now. I mean, here we are 30 years later. Maybe his belly has sort of like that nice sheen to it when you rub a statue a lot. Who knows?
So we had a statue of Joseph Baldwin in the middle of the mall in Kirksville, and you went to Joseph Baldwin Academy,
The
right?
Baldwin Academy, indeed.
Yeah. They still invite kids to that. Like, I think they invited about 70% of my boys' 8th grade class to the Baldwin Academy. They must not get a lot of takers, yeah. So one of the dumbest things that I ever did in college, we had it wasn't dumb when we did it this way. We would make dry ice bombs, which consists of, you take an empty 2-liter, you put maybe a tablespoon of dry ice in the bottom of it, you put maybe a couple of cups of water, you put the lid on, and you run away, and the thing explodes. And we would do that in the country, like put a giant paint bucket on top of it, like a paint bucket you'd sit on,
Mm-hmm.
and it would launch the paint bucket like 50 feet in the air.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how explosive this thing was. So God, what a bunch of idiots. This is a bunch of Campus Christian Fellowship leaders, right? Leaders of Campus Christian Fellowship. We're like, man, let's get a dry ice bomb and let's put it between Joseph Baldwin's legs and explode it. Oh, yeah, this is a great idea. So I think there were 8 or 10 of us, and we decided we were going to go because you got to prepare this thing and then get the heck out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the statue is like there, but it's next to an old historical building. I don't know exactly what it was, but it's within 30 feet of a building, and then it's pretty much open after that. So the 10 of us are there, and we've got it worked out. We're going to set it, and then we're going to walk off in twos. 2 people that way, 2 people this way, whatever. And I was walking off with Carmen, who had a crush on at the time. So we put the ice in, we put the water in, we put the cap on, and we all kind of we didn't run because we wanted to make sure, we're being very careful that no one's approaching the statue. So we're going to cover all the entrances, right?
Safety first, kids.
Yeah, exactly. And it was the middle of the night. It was late, so nobody was there, but we're making sure. So we walk off and probably get 20 to 30 feet away, and the sound of the explosion, it sounded like like a bomb. It sounded like a bomb, which it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at Carmen, she looked at me, we just said, I'm sure it had fear. These are the super conservative Christian leaders of Campus Christian Fellowship. We bolted for our lives. And I'm sure there were fingerprints there if they really wanted to find out, but there was an article in the school paper the next week that said someone had set off a chemical bomb under the Joseph Baldwin statue. And we were like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I guess that's what we did.
Technically speaking.
Yeah.
So I had an experience with those as well. We had a kind of a whole series of dry ice bomb incidents on campus, and the ATF came out to investigate because maybe it was like a whole thing on college campuses at the time, but there were a lot of them. And I was a senior resident assistant at the time, and we were trying to find who was doing it. And so there was one incident where we thought there was someone like planting one outside, and this is 1 a.m. or whatever. And I ran out. I remember running out to try to catch this person, feeling like I'm all ATF, or whatever. And the thing blew up as I was running toward. I was probably 20 feet away when it blew, and of course it throws shards of 2-liter plastic bottle everywhere.
Yeah.
And anyway, yeah, those things are massive, and they're not to be trifled with. But in college, it sure seemed cool.
Yeah, the stupid things you do, man.
We checked. So we had a party my freshman year. I lived on the 11th story, which was awesome for a lot of reasons. And so we had a party one week where we had watermelon and movie night, like on a Wednesday night. And so we had big posters on the wall. Don't forget watermelon and movie night on Wednesday. We're going to be watching whatever, Terminator 2. And so we had this party. We had a bunch of watermelon we bought, and everyone had had their fill of watermelon. We had all these watermelons left over. We're like, well, shoot, what do we do with all these watermelons? Well, when you live on the 11th story and you have a bunch of watermelons, there's really only one thing to do. So we went to my window. I was kind of on the corner, and the sidewalk was below, like 100 plus feet below. And so, safety first, kids. We sent a spotter uh, down to the ground to make sure no one was coming out the door, because it's like the door to the main sidewalk to campus, to make sure it was clear. And then he'd wave up at us, and we'd like chuck these watermelons. and,
That's awesome.
and I mean, it's far enough that it probably took him like 4 or 5 seconds to fall that far, right? So in that time, I suppose someone could have, come around a corner and been absolutely slaughtered by a watermelon from that high up. So anyway, so all these watermelons just smashed all over the pavement. And a little while later, the resident director comes up to our floor, and she's like, so there have been some reports of watermelons falling from a window, and we can't really figure out where they're from. And we're like, really? That's weird. We wouldn't do anything like that. Meanwhile, there are signs all over the floor about our watermelon and movie night. And we're just like, oh, that's weird. So they couldn't actually pin it on us, but I'm pretty sure they knew who it was.
Who cleaned up the watermelon?
Not us.
It's so nice.
I don't know.
So my freshman year of college, I came back from, I don't know, going home one time, and I had a like this pre-packaged pound cake. This is when I was in the dorm with Matt. And I had this pound cake, and I had it in my fridge, and I was waiting for the day to eat it, open it, eat my pound cake. I was really excited about it. I really like pound cake. And I came into my room one night, and it was like I was probably Friday night. Everybody was goofing off and running around the dorms and whatever. And somebody had opened the pound cake, and you could see like the fingerprints where they just grabbed a chunk of it and eaten my pound cake. So the whole thing, so the whole thing was soiled for me. And for some reason, I completely went off the deep end, like completely. And I don't know how I came to the conclusion, but I decided that this guy named Travis had walked into the room, eaten the pound cake because he just wanted to, whatever. So I went down to Travis's room. Travis was in a room at the end of the hall, like it was a 4-person room. I remember, I think Ken was in there, this guy named Ken. And so they had the beds all on one side of it. Then the other side, they had like beer can pyramids. They had an aquarium. They had all this stuff. And I'm like, where's Travis? Like nobody's in there. I'm like, and the door's open. And I can't find Travis. And I'm like, I'm so pissed. So I start taking the pound cake because I got it in my hands, and I'm wadding it up in little balls, and I'm throwing it. I'm like knocking beer can pyramids down. I'm smearing it on. I lost my mind. I'm like putting giant chunks of it in their aquarium. I'm spreading on the door. I was so pissed because I was sure that Travis had eaten my pound. I have no idea who ate my pound cake. It was pretty rude, but whatever. A little bit of an overreaction. And so, and none of them were in the room, so they didn't see this stuff. And I'm sure they discovered it later. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm so pissed. He deserves it. Whatever. So later that night, and I'm telling about this story. Of course, I'm justified, and they're probably all thinking, what is the matter with you? So we were sitting in one room in a hall, and we were pennying Fred and Rob into the borough.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
So if anybody doesn't know what pennying is, in the dorms, and this might work in a regular door too, but especially the dorms, all the door jambs are all metal, and you can take pennies and slide them in between the door jamb and the door until it's snug. And if you do that, the door has enough tension that you can't open the door. Like the door will not open from the inside. So we were pennying them into the borough, and there were probably 10 of us in the room across the hall, thought we were great, having fun and whatever. And Travis comes in. He's like, what is going on? And I'm like, you ate my pound cake. And Travis isn't a big guy, but he's like a country guy, right? So I'm like little suburban skinny guy, and he's like grew up on a farm guy, right? So that's bad for me right off the bat. And He's like, I did not eat your pound cake. I'm like, yeah, you did, man. I know I asked 4 people, blah, 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 whatever it is. You don't ever do that again. You deserve blah, blah, blah. And so I turn away to sit down, and his fist hits me in the side of the head. And like everything spins. I don't ever remember getting hit before that. Everything starts spinning, and I didn't fall over, but I kind of stumbled, and I sat back up, and nobody's just like, yeah, you're a moron. Like they all just sat there, and nobody was getting in the middle of it because I was a complete jackass. Um, and that was the end of it. So I deserved every bit of that punch, and I still have no idea who ate my pound cake.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of stupid stunts, I don't know if you were there. There was, I think our senior year, we went to UMSL for a speech and debate tournament. It might have been like the state or regional one or something like that. I know Aaron was there because he was part of this with me, and you were probably there. But we broke into that building. There's a building in the middle of UMSL's campus that's like 15 stories tall. It's like an
Okay.
office building or
Yeah,
something
I
like
know.
that.
Yeah.
So we broke into it, and we managed to find an open door or something like that, and we managed to go up the stairs and got to the roof of this building. This isn't ringing a bell for you?
No.
Okay. I know
Yeah, I
Aaron
wasn't
was there
there.
with me.
Okay.
So we get to the roof of this building. Oh, Mike Etheridge. I think Mike was there too.
Oh, there's a story.
So we're on the roof of this building. It's wintertime. It's like December or January or something like that. So it's cold. And there's like all these sheets of ice on the top of the building where the water had kind of collected on the flat roof and then it frozen. And being the intelligent 18-year-old people we are, like, what'd be really cool is if we threw these ice sheets off the roof of this building. And unlike the safety that I admonished about before, we did not have a spotter down below. We were standing on this 15-story or whatever building, and we're chucking sheets of ice. And these things were like, I mean, they're 3-4 feet across, sheets of
Yeah.
ice, giant sheets of ice, throwing them off. And it was really cool how, they'd fall down in the air and they'd like flip around slowly, and then they'd crash and they'd shatter on the ground. And I'm pretty sure we would have killed someone if they had
Yeah.
walked under there. So it was awesome. But looking back, I'm like, man, what do people think when they do stuff like that?
Yeah.
I got an idea, guys.
Stupid kids, man. Well, the dumbest thing that ever happened was getting in a car with Aaron at any point of your life, if you valued life as it existed.
How many cars did he wreck?
5. He had 5 cars in high school. His
Wow.
parents kept buying him cars.
That's the problem.
Yeah, they certainly weren't discouraging the activity. I remember the story. He had one of our friends, Suzanne, in the car, and on Maclay Road, which is a hilly up and down road and a 2-lane road, one time he accelerated to whatever it took, because it was a 35-mile-an-hour speed, to pass a car to go airborne and pass a car over a hill, like just to scare her. And he could have killed any number of people by doing that.
Betch and I went to Raleigh at one time. We were both home for, I don't know, Christmas or spring break or something like that. And he drove back to Raleigh, which was normally about an hour, 45-minute drive. And he said, I want to see if we can do it in an hour flat. And you can go down like Interstate 44, or you can go these crazy back roads along, I think it's 94 through like Harriman and all this kind of stuff.
It's 100, 109.
Okay, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So we took the back roads because he didn't, there's less fuzz out there. And holy cow, he was moving. I don't remember. We'd have to ask him. I don't remember if we made it in an hour or not, but we made impressive time. And we were probably doing 100-mile-an-hour stretches on this 2-lane highways, passing cars and all this stuff, having a great time.
So stupid. Along that highway there is, because it's the best way to get to 44 to go to like Springfield. It saves you probably 45 minutes.
Okay.
So along that road, there is a store that sells, the sign says, so-and-so's car sales and meat. So you can buy a used car or meat. I don't know what kind of meat, but it's there. So driving. So one time I was, I don't know how old I was, but Jacob, my little brother, was playing high school football. He's playing JV football. And I wanted to get home and see a game back in St. Charles, about a 3.5-hour drive. And I was running late, and I borrowed my friend Ted's car, because at the time I guess I didn't have a car. My car was not working or something. So I was traveling on Highway 63, which also went through Rolla. Um, it was a 2-lane highway, and I was probably doing 100 and passing people on that road
Mm-hmm.
and doing it way too aggressively, where there was at least one time where I had to pull over on the opposite shoulder to avoid a head-on collision.
Dang.
Yeah, it was really stupid. And at some point of that trip, a guy actually like got me to pull over. Like, I don't know if he swung in front of me and put the brakes on and pulled over and maybe get over. And he comes up, he's like, I was at a head-on collision on this highway 3 months ago, and it's dangerous. He was lying, but he was just yelling at me because I'm stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't remember doing a lot of stupid things in the car, but that's probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I'm not a very
Mm-hmm.
adventurous guy when it comes to that, but stupid kids, man.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of explains those kids all partying down in Miami, wherever they were, just saying,
Oh,
whatever.
right.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
don't care. We might get it. That's fine. We got a party. We've been planning this for months. Uh,
All right. Let's wrap.
let's do that. Well, today, tell me about your tree first. Tell me more. What did you say about that today? So you had to tell me about your tree, and then we'll wrap.
So yeah, so we had a windstorm last weekend, so a week ago, and it blew down trees all over the place. So dozens of trees in the forest around us, a couple in our yard. But there was this one tree, it's a large tree, probably I guess it's 80 to 100 feet tall, and it's leaning at probably a 15, 20-degree cant over our driveway. And so, and the base of it had sort of cracked, it had split. And I don't know how it was still standing, but I thought, well, heck, I can cut this thing down. It can't be that hard. And I saw this guy, Travis, who's an arborist and a professional. He came out a few months ago and cut down a number of our trees because they were leaning or compromised or threatening to hit the house. And I'm sure they would have in this last storm if he hadn't cut them down. And it's impressive to watch these arborists work because they wield chainsaws like butter knives. I mean, they're just like swinging these things. They're one handing them as they slice off branches. He climbs, 60 feet up into a tree to lop off the top. I mean, it's pretty cool to watch. And so I'm like, if he can do that, it can't be that hard. It's just a chainsaw. You cut through some wood and the tree falls. And it's already leaning. How hard can it be? And so I was fully prepared, and I've got safety gear. I've got my chaps, and I've got goggles and ear protection and gloves, and my chainsaw. And so I'm like, I'll just go out there. It's leaning. You just cut on that one side, and it falls over, and you're done. It's easy. And I thought, well, before I do that, I should just watch a quick YouTube video, make sure I'm cutting the right place or the right way. So I watched in a YouTube video, and then I watched another one, and then I watched another one, and every one of them is like, so leaning trees are the most dangerous trees to even approach. Like, don't breathe on them wrong. These are the trees that kill people because they're under a great deal of tension and pressure
Yeah,
and stuff. And so if you cut it and something snaps, I mean, those things, an 80-foot tall tree that weighs 1,000 pounds can come flying in a number of directions. Wood can splinter off and fly out like bullets. I mean, it's impressive. And so everyone who's on YouTube talking about cutting leaning trees is like, do not do this. You're an idiot because they're so dangerous. And I thought, well, I told Dirk and Derek that I was going to go do that. And then I kind of joked about if I wasn't around later, I may not be around later. So I called Travis and I said, he lives down the road. He's like a mile from me. And I said, would you mind just coming up here for like 10 minutes and just helping me cut this thing down? Because for you, it's probably a no brainer. But for me, I don't really want to die today, but I also don't want to have a tree leaning over my driveway that's going to fall on our car at some point when we're driving underneath it. So he was a good guy. He came over and he looked at it, kind of looked at it, gauged it a little bit, pulled out his saw, zzz, done. And he did exactly what I would have done. And it fell. Everything was fine. And he's looking around. He's like, we should cut down that one over there for fun too. And there was another tree that was also leaning. It wasn't over the drive. It was like just kind of a leaner in the forest. But it's one that in the next windstorm will probably go over,
yeah,
And he's like, let's just take care of that one too. I'm like, okay. So he slices it up. I mean, 5 minutes. It's amazing. I mean, I guess when you're really good at anything, other people who are not good at it can be impressed by it. But I was impressed. He was made a couple of cuts. This gigantic. I mean, this was probably 100+ feet tall, huge pine tree comes crashing down into our forest. He's like, okay, see ya. And he gets in his truck and drives off. So
it's probably about
I
$500 of labor you just got for free.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we were cutting down trees here, he was charging us $400 to $500 a tree
Yeah,
to do this. So I really appreciate it. I mean, we paid him plenty of money, but it was still a really nice favor that he did, and it just made me feel like yeah, probably better that I don't go out
Good
there and
call.
lumberjack myself. So
So is it just laying there now, and you're gonna slowly chop it up for firewood, or do you have a fireplace?
I chopped it up after he left. So that's called bucking, kids. So the proper
Oh,
lumberjack term is bucking. So I bucked the wood into rounds, is what they're called, and then
yeah.
rounds can be split into firewood. So I've got all the rounds laying out there now, and we're going to donate them to people who need firewood.
Oh, cool. Do you have a
Yep.
fireplace?
Nope. So we have so much wood. I mean, I've bucked probably 6 or 8 trees now. We have so much wood that we can't use. So we're saving a little bit of it for like a campfire in the summer. But geez Louise, we could do campfires for the next 20 years just on the stuff that fell in our yard.
Yeah.
So we're going to donate all that and save a little bit for a few, s'mores parties or
Right.
something.
Cool.
Yep.
All right, sir. Well, we can wrap up, and we'll come back in a week. Maybe we'll come. I don't know if we'll hit back up before I leave or after I get home. I don't know.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good one.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.